Hi, I'm Nolan Finley, Detroit News editorial page editor. I'm back in the Detroit News newsroom, election night 2010. I'm joined by political cartoonist Henry Payne, who's also editor of the MichiganView.com, the home for conservative news and opinion in Michigan. Henry, I mentioned on an earlier webcast that this has been unlike any race I've ever seen, in that it comes down to the wire without a clear favorite on the Republican side. We know today we've had light to middle turnout all over the state. Who do you think that helps as amongst the four Republican candidates?
Well, Nolan, it should help Mike Cox. I mean, a low turnout means the base is turning out. Mm-hmm. Mike Cox has worked very hard for 8 years to get to this point. He's the conservative candidate. He's built a base with the major endorsements across the state, Right to Life, Michigan Chamber. You would think that light turnout would favor him, but Mike is a controversial candidate, and this is an anti-politician year. Yeah. And so I think people are looking for something different. They're looking for an outsider, and that favors Rick Snyder.
I would agree that Mike Cox has had 2 statewide elections. He knows how to run a statewide campaign and get out the vote. Snyder, however, says he's got this high-tech get-out-the-vote technology that he'd loaned to Scott Brown. He's promising big things in the get-out-the-vote area. I guess we'll see in a little bit. I'm thinking Pete Hoekstra, being the only candidate from West Michigan where there are 3 highly contested congressional races, might benefit from a larger turnout out there. But we won't know, I guess, for a couple hours yet. The candidate that has fascinated me throughout this whole race is Mike Bouchard. Why hasn't the Oakland County Sheriff caught fire, Henry?
I think it's an interesting question, because you talk to people in Lansing, you talk to people in Oakland, and Bouchard has been around. He's like Cox. People know him. He's been in the state. He's served in a number of important positions. But I think when you get down to campaign time, campaigning, you have to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And Snyder and Cox are quintessential entrepreneurial politicians. Bouchard has always been an administrator. He was a deputy in the legislature to John Engler. He's been a deputy, obviously, in Oakland to Brooks Patterson as sheriff. Yeah. I don't think he's got quite the entrepreneurial flair.
I don't know what it is.
To get over the top.
I don't know what it is. I've heard so many people say, "Well, I would vote for Mike Bouchard, but I don't think he has a chance." I think Mike Bouchard was victim of the polls early on, and when he didn't show amongst those 3 front runners, those 3 candidates who've sort of exchanged the lead throughout, I think it really hurt him. I think it discounted him in the race. Democratic side, though, you're looking at an extraordinarily interesting race. Virg Bonero come in leading in all the polls. Polls as late as yesterday predicted a big win for Virg Bonero. Virg Bonero wins. It sets up a classic showdown in this state between traditional Democrat and perhaps traditional Republican, depending on who gets the nomination.
Well, and it could be 2 big upsets if you're looking at this race from just a couple months back. Right. Bonero and Snyder, if that's who comes out, could be 2 big upsets. On the other hand, I think you have to look at Andy Dillon, who was the early front runner in the Democratic race, and realize this guy was really the most radical candidate of the bunch, because he was a pro-life Democrat.
Pro-life Democrat who pro-business, proposed some things while he was House Speaker that really angered the unions. Exactly. He wasn't like any Democrat we've seen, although he might have been the answer to the Democrats moving into the future in terms of their influence in this state. But however this comes out, I think any matchup we see in the fall is going to be a really fascinating matchup, and we're going to be following this race throughout the evening. We'll have actual results coming up in an hour or so. We'll be back to talk about it. Thank you again. I'm Nolan Finley from the Detroit News newsroom. Come back and watch our webcast throughout the evening. Thank you.